Hello. Today I am going to talk to you about the Pythagorean Theorem. In fact, it's kind of interesting. In Britain they say Pythagorean, and in the United States we usually say Pythagorean. So sometimes I will say Pythagorean and sometimes I will say Pythagorean, but they're both correct. The essential question for 8th grade lesson 23 is, how can I apply my skills in solving equations to using and solving the values in the Pythagorean theorem? Now, the Pythagorean theorem you may have heard of before, but the Pythagorean theorem requires a right triangle. A right triangle is any angle that has a 90-degree angle. And we always represent a 90-degree angle with this little box in the to represent a 90-degree angle. So in this unit, when we're talking about the Pythagorean theorem, it has to, in order for the Pythagorean theorem to work, it has to be a right triangle. Now, all triangles have three sides. The longest side of a right triangle is the hypotenuse. It is always opposite that right angle. It is the longest side always, and it's opposite. It's called the hypotenuse. The legs are the angles, or the sides that form the right angle. So they're the two sides that form the right angle, and they are, of course, shorter than the hypotenuse. So they're the two shortest sides. And we always represent the legs with the letters A and B, and we represent the hypotenuse with the letter C. So when we say, in the Pythagorean theorem, we say a squared plus b squared equals c squared, A is the length of one of the legs, B is the length of the other leg, and C is the length of the hypotenuse. And the Pythagorean theorem states that the sum of the squares of the legs is equal to the square of the hypotenuse. So let's do some examples. In this first example, I have a triangle that has a side that's 12 feet, a side that's 16 feet, and then an unknown hypotenuse, which we call C. Now, it doesn't matter whether I call this side A and this side B, or the other way around, because they're both legs. But I am going to say that in this example, A is 12 feet and B is 16 feet. And so when I use my Pythagorean theorem, I know my A is 12, my B is 16, and my C is unknown. I'm trying to find that out. Now, I solve an equation like I do normally with order of operation here. 12 squared happens to be 144. Again, if you want to use a calculator to solve these, that's great. 16 squared, we know, is 256. C squared, I don't know yet. 144 plus 256, again, you can use your calculator, and you will get 400. Now, it says 400 is C squared. Now, in order to solve for C, I have to do the inverse operation of squaring. The inverse of squaring is square rooting. So I have to take the square root of both sides. I happen to know the square, so the square root of C squared is C, because that's the inverse operation. The square root of 400 is 20. So the answer is 20 feet. All right, again, while we're doing this video, I would encourage you to pause or rewind as much as you need. In this one length is 7, the other is 24, and it doesn't matter. I will call this one A and this one B, but you can flip-flop your legs is just fine. 7 inches is A, 24 inches is B, and my c is unknown. So we have a squared. Well, a is 7. B squared, b is 24. And my c is unknown. 7 squared I know is 49. And just a reminder, if you have a calculator, although I have my answers right here, 24 squared is 576. And that equals c squared. If I add those together, I get 625 equals c squared. Again, to find c, I have to do the inverse operation. The inverse of squaring is square rooting. The square root of 625, I press the square root button, get 25 equals c. So the unit here is inches. So it is 25 inches. So try it on your own. Let's see if you can do 3 and 4. So if you could pause the video right now, try to do 3 and 4, and then we'll go over them together. All right, let's check your answers. In this problem, A, it doesn't matter, I will say 6 is A, and I'll say 10 is B. A is 6, B is 10, so I get 36, 10 squared is 100. I don't know my hypotenuse, C. 136 equals c squared. When I put that in the calculator, 136, the square root says is 11.6619. What we're going to do is just round it to the nearest tenth. I'm going to say 11.7 is approximately c. And we will show how we use the inverse operation, which is square root. So the answer is approximately 11.7 centimeters. All right, so this problem over here, I'm going to say this is A and this is B. These are the sides that form the right angle. Doesn't matter. 8 feet and 13 feet. So I'm going to say A is 8, B is 13. 8 squared, I know what it is 64. And 13 squared is 169. If I add those together, I get 233, which I know is not a perfect square. To take the square root of each of those, which is the inverse operation, I get 15.264338, and it's going to go on for a long time. So I am going to say, in fact, it's an irrational number. It will never end. It ends up, we're going to round it to the nearest tenth and say 15.3 is approximately C. And so our answer is 15.3 feet. All right. Looking ahead for what we're going to do tomorrow. In this problem, I know my hypotenuse in one of my legs. How might you solve for x? Think about that.